We begin with breaking news. India's military says it's hit 9 targets in Pakistan and in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. 3 people have been killed, over a dozen wounded. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says this was an act of war and his country has the right to respond. And a state of emergency has been declared in the Pakistani province of Punjab. The Indian army says they targeted what they describe as terrorist infrastructure and that no Pakistani military sites were hit. Tensions across the line of control have been elevated after an attack by gunmen in Indian-administered Kashmir 2 weeks ago, in which 26 people were killed. Kamal Haider joins us on the line from Islamabad now. Kamal, what more can you tell us about these attacks and any ongoing developments?
Well, these attacks took place at 3 different locations. One is in Bahawalpur, that is in the Punjab province, and 2 locations in Pakistani-administered Kashmir, one at Kotli and the other at Muzaffarabad, which is the capital of Pakistani-administered Kashmir. We're also getting reports that at least 2 Indian fighter jets, including a Rafale and a Su-30, have been shot down. Pakistan has also said that none of its aircrafts have been damaged or shot down in any incident, and that Pakistan is right now responding with a befitting response, according to the Pakistani military sources, at several locations across the line of control and across the border in India. So it is indeed a evolving situation, but Pakistan is now confirming that it is already carrying out reprisal attacks against the Indian incursions or the Indian missile attacks, which targeted a religious seminary in Bahawalpur, in which at least 1 child has been killed. A number of people are wounded. We still haven't received any reports about casualties in the Pakistani-administered Kashmir. But this is indeed a dangerous escalation, given the fact that Pakistan had said that it wanted concrete evidence, that it was minutes after that attack in Pahalgam, the massacre that took place in which over 24 Indian tourists were killed. India was quick to point the finger of blame at Pakistan. Pakistan said it wanted a neutral inquiry. The attackers are still at large, and Pakistan said this was a knee-jerk reaction. But now things have escalated indeed, and it has been a tit-for-tat response after that Indian strike. We were able to hear fighter jets up in the air suggesting that perhaps a Pakistani counter-strike was underway, and we are now hearing from security forces that Pakistan has responded by striking targets on the other side as well.
OK, Kamal Haider, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date on those latest developments. Let's go live to Neha Punia. She's a journalist who is in India's capital, New Delhi. Neha, what's been the reaction in India to all of this?
You know, we've been building up to this moment for a while now. For several days, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has held several high-level security meetings, including as recently with his Defence Secretary and with the Air Force and Navy chiefs. And overnight, the Indian government announcing that it's carried out strikes on what it calls terrorist infrastructures in Pakistan. It says these were all establishments where terror attacks against India have been planned and directed from. The statement also said that New Delhi's actions have been focused, measured and non-escalatory, and that India has shown, quote, considerable restraint, and it's lived up to its commitment that those responsible for that attack in Kashmir will be held accountable. The Indian Army has posted on the social media platform X a while ago saying justice has been served. But as Kamal was saying, we're also seeing heavy trading of fire along that de facto border in the region of Kashmir. Both sides now exchanging fire there. We've seen ceasefire violations along that border for 12 nights in a row. This would be the 13th night, but we're hearing that there's a significant escalation in what that training of fire looks like. Indian Union ministers have been posting about this operation, which the Indian government has dubbed as Operation Sindoor. And what's also interesting is the timing of this response, because as the country wakes up on Wednesday, we're going to see northern and western states across India holding mock civil defense drills. These were geared at ensuring that civilians are prepared in the event of a quote hostile attack on India. This would have seen factories and key infrastructure being covered, blackout drills being carried out, as well as training of school and university students, something we've not seen in nearly 5 decades since the last time that India and Pakistan saw hostilities at this level. But a lot of experts have been speaking to are also pointing to what we're now seeing, reaction coming in from Washington, D.C., where U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he knew something was going to happen soon and he hopes it ends soon, calling this conflict a shame. But, what's interesting is that there's been no condemnation of the Indian strike from the U.S. so far. But, as the day progresses, I'm sure we'll see more reaction coming in from other world leaders as well.
Yeah, and just mentioning the U.S. there, reports coming into us now that India's National Security Advisor has spoken with US Secretary of State after these strikes. I just wonder what you believe the US's role in this could be. You said there hasn't been any public condemnation of these strikes, but what could they be? What could their involvement be?
This attack happened when US Vice President J.D. Vance was here in India, touring the country with his family, holding trade talks with the Narendra Modi government. And we saw the sort of condemnation that came in very quickly from Washington, D.C. But what was interesting was, the calls for restraint that followed soon after. Many experts have been speaking to, drawing comparisons to how the US dealt with a similar situation in 2019 when 40 Indian soldiers were killed in a terror strike in Indian-administered Kashmir. And back then, the US had very publicly called out Pakistan, criticized its role in backing terror groups that operate on its soil, and had justified India's action, which was to similarly carry out airstrikes in Pakistan, something that Islamabad responded to with air raids as well. And that incident saw diplomatic ties between the nuclear-armed neighbors plummet. But this is a new low. It's interesting that Donald Trump's comments are playing down what's happening, where he simply said that he knew this was going to happen. This would, experts say, suggest that New Delhi would have briefed the US, given that it's a key ally of New Delhi, especially when it comes to defense and strategic ties in the Indo-Pacific. And we've also seen how in the last few days, India has been briefing not just the US, but other members of the UN Security Council. It's spoken to over 100 representatives of different governments worldwide, including the government in Qatar as well. And experts say all of this was done to shore up diplomatic support for it in the event a military strike was carried out by New Delhi.
OK, and we have Pakistan's foreign ministry in, quote, strongly condemning India's actions. In terms of India and Pakistan both being nuclear powers, of course, is there any concern within India that this could escalate out of control?
New Delhi's position has been that it's well within its right to respond to what it said were cross-border links to that terror attack in Indian-administered Kashmir that killed 26 people. We've heard from Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the last few days where he said that his government would hunt down perpetrators and their backers, a tacit reference to Pakistan, to the very ends of the earth. This was a statement that the country's defense minister echoed this week as well, saying that his government is working to try and ensure justice is delivered for that terror attack. But, as all of this was happening, you also had the government announcing those mock civil defense drills that I was telling you about earlier. This is not something we've seen in more than 5 decades, and that tells you how significant the risk of escalation is this time around. Compared to 2019, experts say that India and Pakistan have both ramped up what their military capabilities look like. We're talking about 2 nuclear-armed neighbors who fought 3 wars in the past as well. And this time around, apart from, of course, the military strike that India has now carried out, that Pakistan claims it's responding to as well, we've also seen India crucially suspend a key water sharing agreement that has been in place since 1960. This week, India began restricting water flows of the western rivers as part of that Indus Water Treaty towards Pakistan, something Islamabad has called an act of war. So we've seen India take that step as well, something that hasn't happened despite various moments of conflict between these 2 bitter South Asian rivals. But for now, this is the most serious escalation in ties we've seen in several decades between the 2 countries.
Yeah, and in terms of that attack, that terror attack, the Pakistan saying that they had no involvement in it. And then this time, in terms of these strikes, the Indian army saying that they targeted what they describe as terrorist infrastructure. They're saying that no Pakistani military sites were hit. Is that something that in New Delhi is being accepted?
I mean, the government has maintained that this is a problem, not just, linked to this particular attack that took place in Indian-administered Kashmir, where it said that of the 3 gunmen it's currently looking for, 2 are believed to be from Pakistan. But this is an issue that India has raised consistently for many years now, saying that Pakistan allows terror groups to operate on its soil who then carry out attacks on Indian territory. The allegation also is that Pakistan aids the training and the weaponization of these groups and militants who then try and enter Indian-administered Kashmir, through that de facto border that we've been talking about. And this is a charge that India has leveled at multiple times against Pakistan, asking it to crack down on terror, saying that there cannot be diplomacy at a time when terror attacks on Indian soil continue. It's something that Pakistan has, repeatedly denied. It claims it is also a victim of terrorism itself, particularly in the last few years. But both sides refusing to blink when it comes to these charges. And like I was telling you earlier, it's not just this attack. It's also the 2019 attack in Indian-administered Kashmir when 40 soldiers were killed in a suicide bomb blast. That saw India take, similar action as well, carrying out airstrikes in Pakistan, again reportedly targeting terror groups and their operations there, something Pakistan responded to with air raids as well. And since then, ties have been, very low. But with this, we're seeing the 2 bitter rivals now, see their bilateral ties regress even further. But New Delhi standing firm, saying that, it's well within its rights to respond in such a manner because it had proof of cross-border links and that it did not see Pakistan acting against these terror groups despite calls from the international community to do so.
OK. Neha Punya, journalist in India's capital, New Delhi. We really appreciate your time. Thank you. Michael Kugelman is the South Asia columnist with Foreign Policy magazine. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. So, Michael, what is the perspective then from the US points of view? We've been hearing condemnation from various other people and organisations like the UN, for example, the UN Secretary General saying he's very concerned about the Indian military operations. What will be the US's role here?
Well, I mean, as you know, just a bit ago, President Trump reacted to this situation by saying he hopes that it ends quickly. But we have seen from the time that this crisis began, U.S. officials expressing a desire to try to help de escalate the situation. And the fact that Secretary of State Rubio has been in close touch with his counterparts in both Islamabad and New Delhi, I think that's quite significant. And just before we received word that the Indian strike had taken place, the State Department spokesperson said that the U.S. government is very engaged on this issue and is in touch with both capitals. I think that well, we know that there is a precedent of U.S. governments getting involved in these India-Pakistan crises to push for de-escalation, and those efforts have been quite successful. So I suspect that now we are at a situation where not only has India struck, but Pakistan has counterstruck, that I think we're at the point now where the escalation risks have really grown, and that suggests that the Trump administration will want to try to do what it can to urge the sides to de-escalate. Let's remember the last time you had an India-Pakistan crisis like this, where you had a brief military exchange of hostilities, it was during the first Trump administration in 2019, and at that point there was pretty significant levels of mediation by the Trump administration back then. I would say this though. While it would be good if the U.S. were to try to mediate, I think it would be helpful, given how serious the escalation risks are, if you were to have other countries try to play a role in pushing for de-escalation as well. And I think you could look to certain countries in the Gulf, certainly the Saudis and the Qataris and the Emiratis. There's a lot of opportunities there to push for mediation.
Okay, we are also hearing from the Pakistani point of view, the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif saying that this is an act of war and that they have the right to respond. So in terms of that escalation that we've been discussing there, how far can this go? Or do you think that this was just a warning shot by India?
From the start, I've been much more concerned about the escalation risks in this crisis than I've been in the recent crises going back to 2019 and 2016. And one reason for that is that the terrorist attack that triggered this crisis was particularly brutal and particularly egregious in the sense that it targeted civilians who were identified based on their religion, and it really hit hard across India. And the level of anger was especially strong, suggesting that India would be willing to launch a military strike with significant levels of scale. And we've seen already this initial strike coming from India was of much greater scale than what it did in 2019 after there was an attack in Indian-administered Kashmir. Pakistan has already responded at a much higher level of scale than it did in the 2019 crisis. So that suggests that the risks of escalation are quite high. We will see. It's not yet clear what the nature of this Pakistani retaliation has been. There have been some initial reports that Indian military targets have been targeted. If that's the case, I think that we could expect there to be a pretty good chance that India might want to engage in additional strikes. In both 2016 and 2019, you didn't have that. You had a strike, you had a counter strike, that was it. This is a case where we would have to worry about additional exchanges of hostilities beyond the initial Indian strike and a Pakistani counter strike, keeping in mind both countries have nuclear weapons.
Of course, yes. The nuclear weapons there will be worrying many people in many countries. But I'm just seeing here that Donald Trump has reacted by saying that it's a shame. So that doesn't really denote that he is particularly worried, at least on a public front at the moment. He has also said, I just hope it ends very quickly. Do you think that, Donald Trump maybe just, that's an initial comment from him? Do you think there will be more reaction there?
Oh, I think so. I mean, especially if this crisis continues to escalate, and if you have more hostilities, I definitely imagine that he would weigh in. But at the end of the day, he's not the one that would be working the phones and trying to talk both sides off the brink, so to speak. I think that would fall to the State Department and particularly the Secretary of State, perhaps others in the White House. I don't think that President Trump himself would be the one focused on this, but certainly what he says would certainly send an important signal. He did say it's a shame, which suggests that he is concerned and feels that what's happening is not a good thing, and that might suggest his own desire for escalation. Look, he's someone that likes to project himself as a peace broker, and that suggests that this administration would want to take an interest in trying to do what it can reduce these very serious tensions.
Absolutely. And Michael, I also want to ask you, in terms of Pakistan and India, I don't know how much you know in the sense of who's the big power here. Are they pretty much matched in terms of their military might, or does one have the upper hand?
I mean, certainly India has a much larger military in terms of numbers. It's been that way for quite some time. But I think that it is easy to underestimate the conventional military power of Pakistan. And we've seen already that after this Indian strike, Pakistan essentially immediately has responded with its own strike, which I think would be described as proportionate. So, this is not a case of a significant mismatch. Even though India is a much larger country and has a significantly larger military, both countries have been modernizing their militaries. And I think that could give pause to India in terms of what type of scale it might be willing to use with any additional military action, knowing that Pakistan certainly has the capacity to respond in kind.
OK, thank you very much for bringing us up to date. Michael Kugelman in Washington, D.C. from Foreign Policy magazine. We really appreciate your views and your time. Thank you.
Thank you.